Welcome back into the High School OT press box. Evan Moesta now joined by Joel Bryant here, as over the last week, High School OT has announced 2 football jamborees that will go on during the month of August in Wake County. Like we got to in the open, let's go back over the news and notes for those jamborees. Starting with August 9th, that is the High School OT Jamboree, the 15th annual, Joel. It is at Trentini Stadium on the campus of Wake Forest High School, and it is presented by the United States Army. That is $10 admission. Games begin at 5 o'clock. The last one kicks off at 9 p.m., and as always, it'll be a Wake County Public School System clear bag policy in effect, and there will be no re-entry allowed to Trentini Stadium. But, Joel, there are 5 matchups, 10 teams, all 10 of which made the playoffs last year. What are some things that people can look out for in these games? Let's just start with each matchup beginning 5 o'clock, Corinth Holders and Southern Durham.
So Corinth Holders kind of surprised everyone last year. They went off to this really great start. They won 6 games for the first time in a while. Carl Smith has done a great job leading that program after getting there from Person County. Interested to see how they look in this next year here. I know that they were pretty young last year. They had some big young linemen last year. The quarterback, David Jarman's returning. He has a good season last year. And, of course, Southern Durham, they had such a good season last year. They won 10 games, but the way they went out left a really bad taste in their mouths. They got blown out by J.H. Rose, which was a 30 seed. Went up to Durham and really just handled them. I know that Southern Durham had some injuries in that game, so they think that maybe if they were a little more healthy, they wouldn't have gone out like that. So I'm very curious to see that 2027 group at Southern Durham in particular. Tyson Broadway, the quarterback, Jonathan Dillon, the receiver, Lance Harrison, the defensive back. Those guys, it's getting close to their senior year now, so they have just a couple more years left to make that championship run that they have set in mind, and it could start August 9th. High School OT Jamboree.
Then moving to the 6 o'clock game, this is a very intriguing matchup. Terry Sanford and Harnett Central, they've kind of formed their own little rivalry over the last couple of years. There's a little bit of bad blood on those two sides, but it's because they have been so competitive against one another in the times that they have squared off.
Yeah, so these two teams, they were playing in the All-American 3A, 4A conference for the past 4 years. They're being split up this year. Terry Sanford won this game handily last year, but Harnett Central brings back so much talent from last year's team, including a quarterback in Colby Howard who threw for over 30 touchdowns last year. We know that there's some bad blood in between the teams, and I like some rivalries, so I think it'll be a fun kind of tilt there, away from where they're usually playing, and the fact they're not playing this year, we wanted to get that one in here. I think both these teams are going to be very good. I'm very, very curious about both these teams and how they're going to compete. What's their ceiling in the playoffs? That's my question for both these teams. And I know they're both going to make it. They're both going to be playoff teams, but how far can they go this year? I think we'll get a sense of that starting August 9th.
Now, it is not the finale, but in my opinion, the best game of the day is in that 7 o'clock time slot. Cardinal Gibbons, Rolesville. If you're not in your seat at Trentini Stadium, if you don't have a bag of popcorn in your lap at that point, you're missing out. I think, Joel, this is the marquee matchup of this event.
Yeah, another example where we're taking advantage of these two teams not playing each other this year. There's no love lost between these two programs. Gibbons and Rolesville, they don't really like each other too much. Every time they play, it's always kind of a classic game. There's always just something happens at the end. There's always a tight finish. And the fact that they're not playing this year, I think that's kind of disappointing to me when I heard that. So, of course, we had to make it happen at the Jamboree. Very curious to see, what happens. Obviously, Rolesville won the most recent games, so Gibbons kind of has the chip on his shoulder now. Both these teams loaded with college prospects. There's some guys are going to be playing on Saturdays, and they're going to be making good plays on Saturdays, I think, in the future. I just can't wait for this one, and I'm glad it's kind of in the middle, so it's kind of going to be that big spike of people there in the middle. It's going to be very fascinating to see who wins it.
Yeah, obviously last year, the 2 times that they squared off, including the playoffs, it came down to the very end. Some really thrilling matchups between those two programs. Again, that's 7 o'clock, Cardinal Gibbons and Rolesville. in the High School OT Jamboree at Wake Forest High School. The Cougars, the host team, they play in the 8 o'clock slot. A new look team for Wake Forest, and they're going up against a team in Middle Creek who has some pretty lofty expectations this year, Joel.
Yeah, Middle Creek arguably had the best JV team in the Triangle last year. They didn't really come close to losing. One of the games they played was against Pinecrest's JV team, and I think Pinecrest didn't lose another game that season, and Middle Creek held them on JV. Obviously, not everyone puts stock in the JV like I do, but I think it's very interesting. Besides the JV factor, a lot of the varsity starters from Middle Creek are back from last year. Obviously, they were a playoff team last year. The big thing is going to be at quarterback. So Hawk Schoenfeld graduated. I almost said retired. He graduated in May. They have a new quarterback named Lex Sevilla coming up, and he's very interesting. He looks pretty good in 7-on-7s. So very curious to see Middle Creek this year. I think this could be a very dangerous team down there in 7A. And then Wake Forest, they have a really good running back, Micah Olu. They have a couple of good running backs, actually, and a really good, solid offensive line. We're going to see Wake Forest kind of get more back towards probably that running kind of threat scene that people kind of became accustomed to. And, I'm just excited for this one because these two teams haven't played each other since 2019. And for those that, are around or have been around high school football in the Triangle, during the 2010s, they had multiple matchups deep in the playoffs where they were, kind of, on a collision course, and they finally met, and they ended up having some classic games. So I'm curious to see kind of these two teams play each other in this kind of new era that they're in.
Yeah, Wake Forest and Middle Creek certainly had their battles back in the mid-2010s, and both had quite a lot of NFL talent as well that were featured in those games. We move on to the finale, 9 o'clock at Trentini Stadium. It is going to be the Bulldogs of Southeast Raleigh High School facing off against Millbrook High School. Joel, you feel like both of these programs have a ton of really big prospects to look for, and then also both of these teams have some pretty lofty goals in terms of where they want to be by the end of the season.
Yeah, Southeast Raleigh being a 7A team this year, they think they can go pretty far in 7A, and Millbrook, of course, being an 8A team, they have a very good shot at going far. The 8A East is not particularly overwhelming with talent, I would say. I think the 7A classification in general is a little bit stronger, but Millbrook has a very, very good chance at getting to a state championship this year. Their strength is in that 2027 class, the rising juniors. We just talked to a couple of them the other day. They have multiple 4-star prospects in that rising junior class. Quinn Cypher, the linebacker, and Rashad Streets, the defensive end. Southeast Raleigh, they have 4 guys committed to a Division I college right now. And I can't remember the last time we were able to say that for Southeast Raleigh, but it starts with the edge rusher, Keyshawn Leeser. He's going to Stanford. Was recruited by Andrew Luck. That's a pretty good story there. You were recruited by Andrew Luck to come from North Carolina to California. There must be something special about him. But this game has a lot of college talent in it, and I'm very excited to end the night with this one. I know both these teams have been wanting to play each other for a while, so it's kind of another situation where we kind of made it happen at the Jamboree because it wasn't happening during the regular season for whatever reason. So very curious to see them finally face off against each other.
Yeah, like Joel said, we'll have some preview content coming out over the coming weeks about some of the teams involved in the Jamboree and some of the top players to look out for. Again, the High School OT Jamboree, the 15th annual at Trentini Stadium on the campus of Wake Forest High School, August 9th, presented by the United States Army. A little bit of history here. The Jamboree, the High School OT Jamboree, initially began at Southeast Raleigh High School. We are going back to those roots on August 15th, powering the Southeast Raleigh Bulldog Bash. 4 matchups across that evening: Knightdale versus Cary, Sanderson versus Wilson Prep, Wake Forest versus Garner, and then the finale, Southeast Raleigh and Jordan. Joel, a lot of different teams with some intriguing profiles to them that we can expect on August 15th. Let's start with that Knightdale-Cary matchup, 2 teams that are really looking to get off on the right foot this season.
Yeah, look, neither of these teams had the season they wanted last year, but there is some talent on both teams. I'm very curious to see how they kind of do. Kind of in light of the adversity they faced last year, especially Cary. Cary had these lofty expectations last year, didn't quite achieve them. Kind of curious to see those players with kind of like that fire lit under them from last year. Curious to see how they do this year. But Knightdale, they have a couple of intriguing guys who might be prospects. The quarterback, Jamel Perry, he's a pretty good dual threat player, and then his receiver, Lara Cooper. They're both going to be juniors this year, and they've already done a lot on varsity. So curious to see them, kind of their first step of their junior year, how they do at this Bulldog Bash.
Then moving on to the second game that evening at Southeast Raleigh, it's going to be Sanderson and Wilson Prep, two teams who I don't think we would ever see them play each other. So this is going to be a unique stage for, these two programs.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup. Wilson Prep, they think that they can compete with these larger schools. So they're playing Clayton week 1. And this will be kind of a good test for them. It's playing a big school in Sanderson. Obviously, Sanderson's not the biggest school in the state, but it's much bigger than Wilson Prep. So they're curious to see how they kind of stack up against a team with that kind of depth. And Sanderson, I know, they had a good season last year, but they're really young this year. And Coach Buck really likes these younger classes he has. He's really enjoying coaching these kids. So he's kind of excited about what they can do this year. Wilson Prep, they have so much talent back from that team last year. Their quarterback, Trayvon Usher, is one of the most productive players in the state. So yeah, very, very intrigued by Wilson Prep in this matchup. Just how exactly is it going to look against the larger team? All their guys pretty much go both ways. So Sanderson's not going to have that going on as much. So very kind of curious to see, especially in the second half of that running clock Jamboree game.
We already talked a little bit about Wake Forest, but the Cougars are going to be having a nice little Wake County 7A matchup in this Bulldog Bash. They'll be taking on Garner, and Garner is a program that, a lot like Wake Forest, has been storied for quite some time, but the Trojans once again are starting to reach some of the heights of their powers, right?
Yeah, under Jerron Donald, they've had a really, really good, promising kind of a program here. So people forget, when he first got there, they were coming off like their worst season ever. And since he's gone there, Garner's been to the playoffs 2 times. So I think it's going in the right direction for Garner. They're going to miss that running back they had last year, Devin Grant. He was a very productive player. But at quarterback, Christian Ormody finally has a chance to kind of be like the main guy. There was another quarterback there. They're kind of splitting time over his first couple of years. So he's going to be intriguing to see him take, basically all the snaps this year and how he does as the main guy there. Garner has a couple of really good pieces in the secondary who are college prospects. And yeah, so it's going to be interesting. This is another kind of classic Wake Forest matchup where they played Garner a bunch in the past. There have been some good matchups. So curious to see it at this Bulldog Bash. I'm getting mixed up with the Jamboree because we have 2 now.
And then finally, the finale, we touched a little bit on some of the star power of Southeast Raleigh as they participate in the HSOT Jamboree, but they will take center stage in their Bulldog Bash against Jordan. Joel, there's a lot of playmakers, I would say, on both sides of this one. One name you didn't mention earlier was Christian Freeman, who is NC State's first 2027 commit in state. Mm-hmm. So lots of guys to look for in this Southeast Raleigh versus Jordan matchup.
Yeah, they also have the quarterback, Tydreek Powell. He's committed to Gardner-Webb. The running back, Robert McCullough, he's committed to Campbell. So they're pretty stacked with college talent. Southeast Raleigh is. And the thing with Jordan, so people are going to have to understand this with Jordan. Obviously, Amarion Blue, the star running back, is not there. Blue had, I think, like 4 straight 2,000-yard seasons, something crazy like that. He was crazy productive his whole career. But he's basically the only player that they lost from last year. I think they have 19 starters back from last year's team. They've gone some new faces in. The quarterback, Landon Melton, was super efficient last year. And they weren't even throwing the ball that much. So very curious to see Jordan this year. I think people might be counting them out a little bit. But I'm telling you, in the 8A East, I think it's wide open. And Jordan could take a very interesting first step at this Jamboree.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Also, Melton now has a full season under his belt at Jordan and being able to see what all he is able to provide for the Falcons that year.
And one thing on him is he got there last year. He transferred from Hillside. He got there like really close to the season. So he didn't have a whole off season at all. And now he's had the whole off season under Coach King, a full off season, and just kind of getting even better at what they do. Just really feeling out the system even better. So yeah, he could really have a nice season this year as a senior.
Again, that is the Southeast Raleigh Bulldog Bash, August 15th at Southeast Raleigh High School, powered by HighSchoolOT. Knightdale, Cary, Sanderson, Wilson Prep, Wake Forest, Garner, Southeast Raleigh, and Jordan. If you want to see information on this event and the HighSchoolOT Jamboree, just head on over to highschoolot.com/football, and all of that coverage will be there.